This is Ireland. For ages, Ireland was among Europe's poorest nations. But then things changed. Today, Ireland is one of the richest countries in Europe. Sounds great, right? However, many in Ireland don't think so. In fact, 70% of its young people are thinking of leaving, mostly due to economic concerns. So what's the real story? Why are people in such a rich country unhappy with their economy? The truth about Ireland's economic rise isn't as shiny as it seems. So, how has Ireland gone from rags to riches? How have the inhabitants of Ireland been affected by this economic rise? And finally, what is the true problem with the Irish economy? For much of its history, Ireland was known more for its struggles than its successes. Whether as part of the UK or as an independent nation, Ireland was synonymous with poverty. Its economy, largely agricultural and underdeveloped, heavily leaned on trade with the UK. Plus, many Irish people, in a bid to escape their harsh realities, chose to leave, further straining the country's economic health. Move the clock back to the late 1980s, and things weren't looking much brighter. Ireland was still lagging behind other Western European nations. In 1985, the country experienced its highest unemployment rate ever recorded of 17.3%. But then, Ireland had an idea, a master plan. Being a member of the EU, Ireland recognized the benefit of the single market system. This meant businesses could sell to all EU member states, but only pay taxes in one. Ireland wanted to be that one state. To attract companies, Ireland decided on a unique strategy: to keep its corporate tax rate as one of the lowest in Europe. At 12.5%, this attractive rate, combined with other economic incentives, made Ireland an irresistible destination for businesses. For foreign companies, the effective tax rate was set much lower. And it worked. Big names like Dell and Microsoft set up shop in Ireland, not necessarily for its market size, but for the significant tax benefits. This strategic move propelled Ireland into an economic growth spurt throughout the 1990s and 2000s, comparable to powerhouses like Singapore and South Korea, earning Ireland the nickname the Celtic Tiger. Then 2008 came with the global economic downturn. Ireland took a hit, but chose an aggressive path forward: further reduced taxes. These almost non-existent taxes transformed Ireland into a global tax haven. The effective tax rate in 2008 for U.S. companies was 11.3%, and in 2009, they were further reduced to 9.5%. Many U.S. companies began channeling their worldwide profits through Ireland, benefiting from the ultra-low tax rates. Despite these businesses paying minimal taxes, the sheer volume meant a significant revenue stream for Ireland. Emerging from the crisis, the Celtic Tiger evolved into the Celtic Phoenix, soaring higher than ever. In 2015, the country's GDP grew by an astonishing 26.3%. This growth was mainly driven by the restructuring of several multinational corporations and relocating their economic activities, and more specifically, their underlying intellectual property to Ireland, wrestling in immense growth for the country's GDP. Ireland has become a magnet for skilled tech professionals. It started echoing the vibes of Silicon Valley, marking a monumental shift in its global reputation. Yet here's where it gets puzzling. If everything's so rosy, why are so many young inhabitants contemplating leaving? The glittering facade of Ireland's success, when examined closely, reveals some cracks. Recently, a survey revealed a startling fact. 7 in 10 young Irish folks, aged 18 to 24, are thinking of packing up and leaving for good. The reason? Their dissatisfaction with the quality of life. At the heart of this concern lies a massive housing crisis that Ireland has grappled with for years. Though housing challenges plague many countries, Ireland's predicament stands out. In a particularly alarming trend, Ireland's housing prices have surged more than twice as dramatically as any other country in the EU in recent years. By 2021, it wasn't just that Ireland faced a housing issue, it was clearly the most expensive state in the EU for housing costs, sitting at a whopping 94% above the EU average. Ireland's government policies are in a bit of a bind. They've set up rules that make dense urban housing development a complex maze. On top of that, almost anyone can raise objections to halt a housing project. This has resulted in a severe housing shortage. What does this mean for the average person? Either they find housing too pricey, or there's just none available. To put it in perspective, a year back, only 851 rental spaces were up for grabs in a nation of 5.1 million. The housing debacle is just the tip of the iceberg. Peel back a layer and it's clear. In many respects, Ireland has a management problem. The challenges extend beyond housing. Infrastructure woes have persisted for years. There's been difficulty in constructing roads, enhancing energy infrastructure, and maintaining a functioning healthcare system. The nation's hospitals are in a continuous loop of crises, packed to the brim, lacking funds, and witnessing a doctor exodus to other English-speaking destinations. In 2022, a total of 1,325,180 people were waiting for some form of operation or procedure or to see a consultant, the biggest backlog in the history of the state. This accounted for 1/4 of the nation's population. Sinn Féin health spokesman David Cullinane commented on these figures and said the figures reveals the health service is now in a real state of crisis. Now, it's vital to note that Ireland isn't the only one wrestling with such problems. But what's baffling is the stark difference between Ireland's celebrated economic achievements and the ground reality. So the burning question arises, if everything looks so good on paper, why doesn't real life match up? Could it be that the so-called Irish miracle isn't quite the wondrous tale it's made out to be? It's no secret that Ireland boasts an impressive GDP close to $530 billion. At a glance, one might think the Emerald Isle is flourishing, economically outpacing most of its peers. However, digging deeper paints a different story. While Ireland's GDP shines, some numbers don't match up. Let's consider average salaries. While decent, they trail behind Scandinavian countries like Norway and Sweden, which has smaller GDP. Interestingly, countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, and Austria, which have about half of Ireland's GDP per capita, offer comparable salaries. The disparity grows clearer when assessing disposable incomes. Despite its rosy GDP, Ireland sits at a humble 14th place in the EU, indicating a discrepancy between the country's apparent wealth and its citizens' actual earnings. At the center of this puzzle is a contested economic theory. While some economists argue that the Irish GDP figures are inflated, the Irish government staunchly disagrees. But there's a plot twist. Many believe that global corporations skew these figures by channeling their profits through Ireland. This phenomenon, known colloquially as Leprechaun economics, suggests that the country's GDP doesn't truly reflect its people's prosperity. The narrative becomes even more compelling when observing the job market. Tech giants like Google, which indeed have a presence in Ireland, employ only a fraction of the workforce. The majority of the Irish work in sectors far removed from these global tech behemoths, often earning substantially less. As with any tale, there's a duality. Ireland is both prosperous and struggling, and while its booming GDP steals the limelight, many of its citizens grapple with a less glamorous reality. This dichotomy masks inherent issues in the Irish economy, not the least of which is its soaring national debt. The catch? This debt is obscured by the country's inflated GDP, leaving an illusion of stability. Echoing the sentiments of economist Aaron Levinstein, while statistics can hint at the truth, they can also cleverly disguise it. And with mounting scrutiny on tax havens, Ireland might soon find its economic facade under a microscope. If the nation's economic miracle proves to be more myth than reality, the repercussions could be significant.